Section 9.2.4, Gender Development. As we saw in Unit 7b, we humans share an irresistible urge to organize our worlds into simple categories. Among the ways we classify people as tall or short, fat or slim, smart or dull, one stands out. At your birth, everyone wanted to know, boy or girl. Our biological sex, in turn, helps define our gender, the biological and social characteristics by which people define male or female. Under the influence of our culture, our gender influences our social development. Gender similarities and differences. What are some ways in which males and females tend to be alike and to differ? Having faced similar adaptive challenges, we are, in most ways, alike. Men and women are not from different planets, Mars and Venus, but from the same planet Earth. Tell me whether you are male or female, and you give me virtually no clues to your vocabulary, intelligence, and happiness, or to the mechanisms by which you see, hear, learn, and remember. Your opposite sex is, in reality, your very similar sex. And should we be surprised? Among your 46 chromosomes, 45 are unisex. But males and females also differ, and differences command attention. Some much talked about differences are actually quite modest, as Janet Hyde, 2005, illustrated by graphically representing the gender differences in self-esteem scores across many studies, figure 9.20. Some differences are more striking. Compared with the average man, the average woman enters puberty 2 years sooner, lives 5 years longer, carries 70% more fat, has 40% less muscle, and is 5 inches shorter. Other gender differences appear throughout this book. Women smell fainter odors, express emotions more freely, and are offered help more often. They are doubly vulnerable to depression and anxiety, and their risk of developing eating disorders is 10 times greater. But then, men are some 4 times more likely to commit suicide or suffer alcohol dependence. They are far more often diagnosed with autism, color blindness, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder as children, and antisocial personality disorder as adults. Choose your gender and pick your vulnerability. How much does biology bend the genders? What portion of our differences is socially constructed by the gender roles our culture assigns us and by how we are socialized as children? To answer those questions, let's look more closely at some average gender differences in aggression, social power, and social connectedness. Gender and aggression. In surveys, men admit to more aggression than do women, and experiments confirm that men tend to behave more aggressively, such as by administering what they believe are more painful electric shocks. Betancourt and Kernahan, 1997. The aggression gender gap pertains to physical aggression, such as hitting, rather than verbal relationship aggression, such as excluding someone. The gender gap in physical aggression appears in everyday life at various ages and in various cultures, especially those with gender inequality. Archer, 2004, 2006. In dating relationships, violent acts, such as slaps and thrown objects, are often mutual. Strauss, 2008. Violent crime rates more strikingly illustrate the gender difference. The male-to-female arrest ratio for murder, for example, is 10-1 in the United States and almost 7-1 in Canada. FBI, 2007. Statistics Canada, 2007. Throughout the world, hunting, fighting, and warring are primarily men's activities. Wood and Eagley, 2002-2007. Men also express more support for war. The Iraq War, for example, has consistently been supported more by American men than by American women. Newport et al., 2007. Gender and social power. Around the world, from Nigeria to New Zealand, people have perceived men as more dominant, forceful, and independent, women as more deferential, nurturant, and affiliative. Williams and Best, 1990. Indeed, in most societies, men are socially dominant. When groups form, whether as juries or companies, leadership tends to go to males. Colarelli et al., 2006. Men worldwide place more importance on power and achievement. Schwartz and Rubel, 2005. As leaders, men tend to be more directive, even autocratic. Women tend to be more democratic, more welcoming of subordinates' participation in decision-making, Eagley and Carley, 2007, Van Engen and Williamson, 2004. When people interact, men are more likely to utter opinions, women to express support. Aries, 1987, Wood, 1987. These differences carry into everyday behavior, where men are more likely to act as powerful people often do, talking assertively, interrupting, initiating touches, staring more, and smiling less. Hall, 1987, Leeper and Ayers, 2007, Major et al., 1990. Such behaviors help sustain social power inequities. When political leaders are elected, they usually are men who held 82% of the seats in the world's governing parliaments in 2008, IPU 2009. When salaries are paid, those in traditionally male occupations receive more. Gender and social connectedness. To Carol Gilligan and her colleagues, 1982-1990, the normal struggle to create a separate identity describes Western individualist males more than relationship-oriented females. Gilligan believes females tend to differ from males, both in being less concerned with viewing themselves as separate individuals and in being more concerned with making connections. These gender differences in connectedness surface early in children's play, and they continue with age. Boys typically play in large groups with an activity focus and little intimate discussion. Rose and Rudolph, 2006. Girls usually play in smaller groups, often with one friend. Their play is less competitive than boys and more imitative of social relationships. Both in play and other settings, females are more open and responsive to feedback than are males. Macoby, 1990, Roberts, 1991. Ask difficult questions. Do you have any idea why the sky is blue? Do you have any idea why shorter people live longer? Men are more likely than women to hazard answers rather than admit they don't know, a phenomenon Tracy Giuliano and her colleagues in 1998 called the male answer syndrome. Females are more interdependent than males. As teens, girls spend more time with friends and less time alone. Wang and Csikszentmihalyi, 1991. As late adolescents, they spend more time on social networking internet sites. Pryor et al., 2007. As adults, women take more pleasure in talking face-to-face, and they tend to use conversation more to explore relationships. Men enjoy doing activities side by side, and they tend to use conversation to communicate solutions. Tannen, 1990, Wright, 1989. The communication difference is apparent even in student emails, from which people in one New Zealand study could correctly guess the author's gender 2/3 of the time. Thompson and Marachfer, 2001. These gender differences are sometimes reflected in patterns of phone communication. In France, women make 63% of phone calls and, when talking to a woman, stay connected longer, 7.2 minutes, than men do when talking to other men, 4.6 minutes. Smoretta and Lecope, 2000. So, does this confirm the idea that women are just more talkative? To check that presumption, Matthias Mayle and his colleagues in 2007 counted the number of words that 396 college students spoke in the course of an average day. How many words would you guess you speak a day? They found that talkativeness varied enormously by 45,000 words between their most and least talkative participants. But contrary to stereotypes of jabbering women, both men and women averaged about 16,000 words daily. Women worldwide orient their interests and vocation more to people and less to things. Lipa, 2005, 2006, 2008. In the workplace, they often are less driven by money and status and are more likely to choose reduced work hours. Pinker, 2008. In the home, they provide most of the care to the very young and the very old. Women also purchase 85% of greeting cards. Time, 1997. Women's emphasis on caring helps explain another interesting finding. Although 69% of people say they have a close relationship with their father, 90% feel close to their mother. Hujic in 1989. When wanting understanding and someone with whom to share worries and hurts, both men and women usually turn to women, and both report their friendships with women to be more intimate, enjoyable, and nurturing. Rubin, 1985, Sapedin, 1988. Bonds and feelings of support are even stronger among women than among men. Rossi and Rossi, 1993. Women's ties as mothers, daughters, sisters, aunts, and grandmothers bind families together. As friends, women talk more often and more openly. Burnt, 1992, Jindia and Allen, 1992. And when they themselves must cope with stress, women more than men turn to others for support. They tend and befriend. Tamers et al., 2002, Taylor, 2002. As empowered people generally do, men value freedom and self-reliance, which helps explain why men of all ages worldwide are less religious, less God-focused, and they pray less. Benson, 1992, Stark, 2002. Men also dominate the ranks of professional skeptics. All 10 winners and 14 runners-up on the Skeptical Inquirer list of outstanding 20th century rationalist skeptics were men. In the Science and the Paranormal section of the 2007 Prometheus Books catalog from the leading publisher of skepticism, one can find 94 male and 4 female authors. In one Skeptics Society survey, nearly 4 in 5 respondents were men. Shermer, 1999. Women, it appears, are more open to spirituality and are far more likely to author books on spirituality than on skepticism. As Alfred Lord Tennyson said in The Princess, 1847, "In the long years liker must they grow, the man be more of woman, she of man." Gender differences in power, connectedness, and other traits peak in late adolescence and early adulthood, the very years most commonly studied, also the years of dating and mating. As teenagers, girls become progressively less assertive and more flirtatious. Boys become more domineering and unexpressive. But by age 50, these differences have diminished. Men become more empathetic and less domineering, and women, especially if working, become more assertive and self-confident. Kaysen et al., 2006, Macoby, 1998.